This employee at Twitter was bothered by one-off ad hoc decisions that do not appear to be rooted in policy. He's saying we're discriminating for not good reasons. We're not discriminating according to a principle, and we're not discriminating equally, We're discriminating in an unequal fashion. There's sometimes where we have to engage in needful discrimination. We engage in discrimination of sorts all the time. If you're a parent and you've ever had to hire a babysitter and you go interview somebody and you just know, like, that person gives me the creeps. Like, I'm not hiring that person to watch my kid. You're discriminating. You might not even be discriminating necessarily on a lot of data. They might just give you a creepy feeling and you're like, I'm not letting that person watch my kid. If you've ever been a hiring manager and somebody comes in and you're talking to them and you're thinking, yeah, I don't think I can trust this person to know all my finances and know all my passwords. They're not going to pass a background check, if they fail a background check before you hire them. There are all kinds of reasons that we discriminate all the time for, I would say, warranted reasons. And so that's why we have to be so careful about why we discriminate. The word discrimination has been so villainized that we think all discrimination is bad, but it's not. Not all discrimination is bad. We must discriminate or judge ideas, situations, safe and unsafe people. We discriminate all the time, okay? The question is, that's important is, what is the standard that we are using to discriminate? That's what's really important. And so in this work situation with Twitter, he says this employee at Twitter was bothered by one-off ad hoc decisions that do not appear to be rooted in policy. He's saying we're discriminating for not good reasons. We're not discriminating according to a principle, and we're not discriminating equally, We're discriminating in an unequal fashion, an ad hoc fashion. This is a very powerful insight that this person had at Twitter. And who knows what happened? Like, did his supervisor pay attention? Probably not, because these ad hoc kind of slippery slope situations seem to be pretty prevalent at Twitter. But even if everyone is bowing the knee, even if everyone is giving the salute, I want to tell you, Christian, you better know what the Bible has to say so that when you're in the situation, you know exactly what to do. You know how to show up. You know how to act in a just way. Let me just give you couple of scriptures that relate to this particular situation for you to reflect on. Exodus chapter 23. Do not spread false reports. Do not help a guilty person by being a malicious witness. You need to know ahead of time a just person in God's economy and how God defines justice doesn't spread false reports. A person takes 5 extra seconds to research something before they press the retweet button. That person does a Google search to make sure that they're understanding the context of what's being said instead of just retweeting a headline, okay? Do not help a guilty person by being a malicious witness. We don't lie on the witness stand for people. We don't lie about other people in a malicious way on the witness stand in a way that is not true, bearing false witness. Verse 2, do not follow the crowd in doing wrong. When you give testimony in a lawsuit, do not pervert justice by siding with the crowd, and do not show favoritism to a poor person in a lawsuit. This is very important. We don't follow the crowd. If you want to act like a just person, a justice-oriented person, you're not just following the crowd. You're not just automatically bending the knee, giving the salute, Whatever it is that the crowd is doing, posting the black square, no, you're stopping to ask with discernment, do I need to discriminate on this idea? Do I need to discriminate against what this person is saying? Okay. We don't just follow the crowd mindlessly because everybody else is doing something. When we go to court, when we're giving a testimony about somebody else, to a friend, to our supervisor, to an elder in our church, to somebody in authority, we don't pervert justice just by going with the mob and siding with the crowd. Neither do we just show favoritism because somebody is rich or poor. God's people don't do that. That's not how we act. If Christians are going to act in a just way according to God's standards, these are just a few of the things that we need to do to help shape our soul so that we're in the moment, we know exactly what to do. The time to try to figure it out is not when you're in the furnace, right? The 3 Hebrew children, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they didn't bow the knee to the statue. They knew, exactly what they were going to do. They knew exactly what God required. And when it was time, they didn't bow the knee. They didn't go along with the crowd and the false worship and all of that. Let's look at Deuteronomy 10, verse 12. And now, Israel, what does the Lord your God ask of you? But to fear the Lord your God. We don't fear the government. We don't fear our boss. We don't fear other people. When we're acting in a just way, we do it because we fear God. We fear the fact that we serve a God who requires us to, what is the very next phrase? Walk in obedience in him. We want to obey what Jesus has commanded us to do, okay? To love him and serve the Lord with all your heart and with all your soul, and to observe the Lord's commands. This is just obedience. This is another way of saying what was just said in verse 12. Commands and decrees that I am giving you today for your own good. Okay? To the Lord your God belongs the heavens, even the highest heavens, the earth and everything. God is king. Everything belongs to him, including you and I. All right? Verse 16, circumcise your hearts, therefore. Do not be stiff-necked any longer. Bring your heart into alignment with God's plans, purposes, commands, decrees, whatever you want to call them. For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, and the great God, mighty and awesome. Notice the description here that God gives of himself. He shows no partiality and accepts no bribes. He defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow. He loves the foreigner residing among you. In other words, the Gentile who has decided to live among God's covenant people. God has a plan for the Gentiles too. He had a covenant plan for them. Okay? So then we scroll down a little bit later in Deuteronomy in chapter 16, verse 19. Notice that God wants us to be like him. Just as he doesn't show partiality, he doesn't accept bribes. Nobody's going to get off on the last day at the great white throne judgment because they can buy God off, okay? He says, you, as one of my people, do not pervert justice or show partiality. You do not accept a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the innocent. God wants us to be holy just as he is holy. How do we be holy? We do not pervert justice by showing partiality, favoring the rich over the poor. We do not accept bribes. Why not? Because that is how God is. Leviticus 19, verse 15, do not pervert justice. Do not show partiality to the poor or favoritism to the great or the rich, but judge your neighbor fairly. In God's economy, we don't run around with ad hoc, random practices that are not rooted in policies. God does not want his people to engage in that kind of a way. So in this case, a Twitter employee was standing up for a principle, whether he knew it or not, that is consistent with the biblical worldview. And that is that we don't show unfair treatment. We don't show unfair partiality, favoring the rich over the poor or the poor over the rich or whatever. Okay? Now, again, sometimes we have to discriminate. I appreciate that Twitter is now trying to discriminate against pedophiles being on their platform. That's vile. I'm not talking about to not discriminate, that all voices and perspectives are the same. Some discrimination is necessary. This is why we need to understand God's eternal moral law.